My name is Thomas Gray, I'm 28 years old and I work as a software developer. I have always been passionate about technology, ever since I was a child dismantling electronic devices to understand how they work. My work is something I truly love, and it has brought me recognition and some incredible opportunities. I'm a more reserved, introspective guy, but always willing to help when someone needs it. When I'm not coding, I'm probably immersed in a mystery or thriller book, my favorite refuge. I recently decided to make a drastic change in my life. I left the small startup where I worked for years and moved to a new city. I was recruited by one of the biggest technology companies in the country, a chance I simply couldn't turn down. The proposal was irrefutable, a great salary, incredible benefits, and the opportunity to work on innovative projects that could really make a difference in the world. Furthermore, I needed a change of scenery, something that would challenge me and take me out of the comfortable but monotonous routine I found myself in. The house I moved into is in a quiet residential area in the town of Hawthorne. It's a picturesque neighborhood, with tree-lined streets and houses that look like they came out of an architecture catalog. My new home is a two-story house with a red brick facade, surrounded by a well-kept garden. The location is perfect, just a few blocks from parks, cozy cafes, and just a short bus ride from my new workplace. Upon arrival, I was greeted by my new roommate, Ethan Miller. Ethan is in his mid-30s, a little older than me, and works as a financial advisor. He has a striking appearance, tall, with dark brown hair that is always well-groomed and a pair of glasses that give him an intellectual air. His posture is always impeccable, and he seems to be someone who is meticulous with details. At first, Ethan came across as a very organized and respectful guy. He explained that he liked to keep the house clean and orderly, something I also value. In the first few conversations, Ethan was friendly, but there was something about him that made me slightly uncomfortable, as if he was constantly analyzing everything around him. It wasn't something I could point to directly, but a subtle feeling of being evaluated. Even so, we established some rules of coexistence to maintain harmony in the environment. We would share household tasks, respect personal spaces and communicate about any issue that arose. It seemed like a good base for a peaceful coexistence. With these rules in mind and a sense of newness in the air, I prepared myself for this new phase of my life, even though a small part of me was alert to Ethan's behavior. Little did I know, this move would bring much more than a new job and a new city. For the first few weeks, everything seemed to be going well. The household routine was working as planned, and I was starting to adapt to the new job and the new city. However, it wasn't long before small incidents started to catch my attention. The first thing I noticed was the almost disturbing silence in the house. Ethan rarely made noise, even when he was home. He seemed almost invisible, moving silently through the rooms. Sometimes I even doubted whether he was really there, until I heard him tidying up something in the kitchen or opening a door. This behavior made me feel like I was constantly being watched, even if it was just a sensation. Another incident occurred when I realized that Ethan had rather peculiar rules about certain aspects of the house. For example, he insisted that internal doors must always be closed, especially at night. I once casually asked him about this rule, and he simply replied that it was a habit he had had since childhood, without giving much detail. I didn't think much of it at the time, but I started to notice other strange behaviors. One night I was reading in the living room when I heard a strange noise coming from the basement. It was a rhythmic sound, as if someone was scratching the wall or moving something heavy. I asked Ethan about it the next day, and he said it must be the old heater in the house, but his tone was evasive. Even so, I accepted the explanation, although I still felt uneasy. Furthermore, Ethan had a curious habit of rearranging objects around the house. I often found my belongings in different places than where I had left them. When I asked about it, he claimed he was just trying to keep everything in order, but I started to get suspicious. Why would someone go to the trouble of moving my stuff for no apparent reason? These little incidents began to add up, and the image of Ethan as an organized, meticulous roommate began to mix with something more unsettling. Even though I tried to ignore or rationalize these strange behaviors, I couldn't shake the growing feeling that something was wrong. More and more, the house, which was supposed to be a haven of tranquility, began to seem like a place full of secrets and mysteries, and I didn't know where these secrets could take me. As the days went by, I began to notice more disturbing details that only increased my suspicion. Some nights, I would wake up to strange noises coming from the hallway. They seemed like light, almost furtive footsteps, and when he finally gained the courage to open the bedroom door, the hallway was always empty. What disturbed me even more was that even after ensuring that all the doors were closed before going to bed, I would often find them slightly ajar in the morning. Tension increased with each new incident. Once, when I arrived home after work, I found my bedroom door wide open, even though I was sure I had closed it when I left. Even stranger was finding some of my belongings, like books and clothes, disorganized in a way I never would. I asked Ethan if he had come into my room for some reason, but he denied it, seeming almost offended by the insinuation. Another disturbing detail emerged when I began to notice personal belongings disappearing and reappearing in unexpected places. One night, I left my watch on the nightstand next to my bed, but the next morning, it was in the bathroom, carefully placed next to the sink. When I questioned Ethan about this, he claimed not to know anything and suggested that I might be forgetting where I left my things. Although I tried to accept his explanation, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. In an attempt to ignore these strange behaviors, I started avoiding Ethan as much as possible. My nights were spent locked in my room, and I avoided leaving the house when I knew he would be there. Still, the feeling of being watched never left me. I began to question my own sanity, trying to rationalize each strange event as a coincidence or the result of my own distraction. However, the frequency and nature of the incidents made it increasingly difficult to ignore the possibility that something sinister was afoot. Still, I tried to stay calm and get on with my life, focusing on work and trying to ignore the restlessness that was growing inside me. But the truth was that every new sound in the middle of the night, every inexplicably opened door, and every misplaced object fueled my fear and paranoia. I was living in a constant state of alert, always waiting for the next incident, and the house, which was supposed to be a refuge, was turning into a real nightmare. Things really started to get worse when Ethan's invasive behaviors became more frequent and disruptive. One morning, I woke up earlier than usual and found Ethan inside my room, rummaging through my desk. He seemed to be searching for something with a disconcerting calm, as if he had every right to be there. When I asked what he was doing, he looked at me blankly and said he was looking for a charger he had borrowed from me, something I knew wasn't true. The feeling of invasion was overwhelming, and everything inside me screamed for me to get out of there as quickly as possible. From that point on, I started locking my room whenever I left, but that didn't seem to stop Ethan. On more than one occasion, I came home to find clear signs that someone had been in my room. Books out of place, drawers overturned, and even clothes that I was sure I had left in the closet, now thrown on the bed. I felt a mixture of anger and helplessness, knowing that my privacy was being blatantly violated. I decided to confront Ethan once again, hoping that a heart-to-heart would resolve the issue. I found him in the living room, playing video games as if nothing was happening. I tried to remain calm and explained that I wasn't comfortable with him coming into my room and going through my things. He looked at me with an irritated expression and denied everything, stating that I was imagining things. His cold, dismissive reaction only increased my frustration, and I realized he had no intention of respecting my boundaries. The situation reached a critical point when, one night, I woke up with the feeling that someone was watching me. I slowly opened my eyes and, to my horror, I saw Ethan standing next to my bed, staring at me. Shock and fear paralyzed me for a moment, but I soon managed to muster the strength to scream, ordering him to leave my room. He left without saying a word, but the image of his cold, empty eyes was burned into my mind. The next morning I tried to talk to him again, but he just laughed, saying I was having nightmares. It was clear that there was no more room for rational conversations. Ethan was pushing all limits, and my sense of security was quickly disappearing. His constant intrusion and blatant denial of his actions left me on the brink of despair. More and more, I felt like I needed to get out of that house before something even scarier happened. But for now, I was stuck there, trying to survive each day and night, always anticipating what the next invasion of my privacy would be. I finally decided to investigate the basement. The musty smell and gloomy atmosphere were enough to make me hesitate for days, but something inside me knew this was where I would find answers. With a flashlight in hand, I descended the creaking steps, illuminating the darkness before me. Among dusty boxes and old furniture, I came across an old trunk, covered in cobwebs. I opened it carefully, and there, wrapped in black cloth, I found a set of photos. They were portraits of unknown people, all with their eyes cut by deep lines. A chill crept up my spine as I realized that some of these people looked strangely like me. The surrounding space seemed to close in, as if the basement itself was watching me. That night, after hours of half-closed eyes and my heart racing with tension, I finally saw him. It was late, the room was plunged into darkness, only the faint light of the street filtered through the curtains. I stood up in bed, the silence weighing me down like a damp blanket. It was then that I saw the shadow next to my bed. A dark figure, still and silent like the night that surrounded it. My first instinct was paralysis. I couldn't form words, only feel the cold touch of fear run down my spine. My eyes adjusted to the darkness, outlining her slender silhouette, motionless as a specter. The silence was deafening, my heart hammered in my chest, echoing with each passing second. What did he want? How had he gotten there without me noticing? The questions echoed in my mind, but the answer was unfathomable in that moment of pure terror. I mustered enough courage to take a deep breath and, in an impulse to survive, I screamed. It wasn't a shrill scream, but a guttural roar that echoed in the room, cutting through the silence like a knife. The impact of my voice seemed to awaken him from a momentary trance. He took a step back, his figure blending back into the shadows. My mind screamed to run away, to escape this nightmare that had become my reality. Jumping out of bed, I ran to the door, each step echoing in the oppressive silence. I didn't look back as I walked down the stairs. My mind pounded with what I had seen, trying to understand the truth that was hidden behind that sinister figure. There was no time to explain, just escape, find safety and answers in equal measure. I knew I couldn't stay there any longer. The discovery of that secret room left me shaking with fear and a sense of urgency that I couldn't ignore. It was late at night when I decided I needed to get out of there as quickly as possible. My mind was in a whirlwind of thoughts as I prepared to flee. I hurriedly grabbed my backpack, throwing as little as possible inside, a few essential personal items and my cell phone. The house was silent except for the muffled sound of footsteps below. I tried to move quickly, without making any noise, but every creaking of the floor sounded like thunder to my ears. I opened the bedroom door slowly, hoping to find nothing on the other side. The darkness of the hallway was suffocating, but I needed to cross it. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. Every sound, every shadow, made me shiver. I head downstairs, trying not to think about what could be waiting for me down there. The house felt like a capsule of silence and darkness, ready to swallow me if I made the slightest noise. He arrived at the front door, the key in his hand shaking. One last look back, hoping to see nothing. And finally, I escaped into the cool night air. After rushing out of the house, I find myself shaking at the steering wheel, driving aimlessly through the empty streets of the city. The adrenaline still pulses strongly through my veins, and my heart beats wildly in my chest. The image of my former roommate, standing next to my bed that night, still haunts my mind. I realize you didn't bring much besides the clothes on your back. There is nothing that connects me to that house anymore, except the feeling of relief at being away from that oppressive environment. As I drive, I begin to reflect on everything that happened. I remember the first few weeks when everything seemed normal. The little quirks that I initially overlooked have now turned into clear warning signs. The nighttime noises that I tried to rationalize as just noises from the old house now echo eerily in my mind. Invasions of privacy that initially seemed like innocent oversights turned out to be calculated invasions. Every time my room was ransacked in my absence, every time I found my things disturbed, I felt more vulnerable, more watched. And the height of my agony came with the discovery of that forbidden cellar, with its locked doors and its hidden secrets. What was he hiding there? I can't say for sure, but the mere idea that my ex-roommate had access to that place was disturbing enough. However, what scares me most is not the events themselves, but what I learned about trust and safety. The sense of security that a home was supposed to provide was shattered, replaced by the constant paranoia of being watched, of not being safe even in my own quarters. Now, as I drive toward a new beginning, I promise myself that I will never again ignore the warning signs, no matter how small. Experience has taught me that sometimes fear is a vital instinct that should not be underestimated. I am grateful that I had the courage to leave before something worse happened. If you've experienced something similar or are curious to find out the outcome of this chilling story, don't forget to leave your comment below and share your experiences. Subscribe to the channel for more suspense and mystery stories like this. Until next time, and remember, keep the lights on at night.